The station was never meant to matter. That was the first thing anyone would tell you about Arindergate. It wasn't a military outpost, not a political hub, not even particularly large by interstellar standards. It sat in orbit around a dim blue star at the edge of a trade corridor most captains only used when they wanted to avoid traffic. There were easier routes, faster ones, safer ones. Arindergate was simply there, a quiet waypoint, a place where ships stopped to refuel, recalibrate navigation systems, and let their crews stretch their legs before disappearing back into the long dark between systems. It had no defense grid worth mentioning, no standing fleet, no weapons platforms hidden beneath its surface. There had never been a need. For 73 years, nothing had happened there. And because nothing had happened, people had built lives. The station rotated slowly, its outer ring lined with habitation sectors where artificial daylight followed a gentle cycle. Morning came in soft gold, filtered through atmospheric panels that simulated a sky no one aboard had ever actually stood beneath. Children walked to school along curved corridors that looked out into space, their reflections faint against the stars. They carried tablets and half-finished conversations, arguing about trivial things in the way children always had, no matter what world they were born on. In Sector 12, a mechanic named Rollin kept a small workshop filled with tools that were older than most of the ships he repaired. He trusted them more than the new ones. Said they had learned patience. Across the ring, in a narrow apartment with a window that faced the trade lane, a woman named Elia ran a small kitchen that delivered meals to long-haul crews who were tired of nutrient packs and wanted something that tasted like effort. She never advertised. She didn't need to. People remembered her food. There was a school with 312 students. The teachers had long ago stopped trying to impose strict structure on children who grew up watching stars instead of horizons. Instead, they encouraged curiosity. Questions were rewarded. Silence was not. On Thursdays, the older students helped the younger ones with their lessons, not because it was required, but because someone had once noticed that they learned better that way. And the system had stayed. Near the central docking spine, a man named Evo maintained the station's communication relays. It was quiet work. Most of the time, signals passed through automatically, routed by systems that didn't need him unless something went wrong. Very little ever did. He spent long hours in the control room with a cup of tea that always went cold before he finished it, reading archived transmissions from decades ago. Messages between people who had passed through the station long before him. He said it made the place feel inhabited. There were 190,000 people on Arindergate. Not crowded. Not empty. Just enough that you could walk through a corridor and recognize faces without knowing names. Just enough that the station felt like something more than machinery. On the night everything changed, a boy named Kale was sitting cross-legged on the floor of his family's living quarters, trying to record a message. He was 8 years old. In front of him, the small projection screen flickered as he adjusted the angle for the third time, frowning in concentration. Behind him, the soft hum of the station's systems filled the room, steady and familiar. "You're too close," his mother said from the kitchen without looking. "I know," he replied, not moving. He held up a small model he had built from scrap components. A ship, uneven and slightly crooked, but unmistakably his. "This is for you," he said, practicing. "I made it myself. It doesn't fly, but I think it looks right." He paused, considering that. Mostly right. He smiled. The recording hadn't started yet. But he was ready. Arindergate had no weapons. No defenses. No reason to expect what was coming. And for 73 years. That had been enough. By the time a place survives long enough to feel ordinary, people stop noticing how fragile it is. They stop thinking about systems and structures and the long chain of decisions that keep air circulating and lights on. They stop seeing the machinery. They see each other. Kale lived in Habitation Ring C, Sector 9, in a 3-room unit that always felt slightly too small and somehow exactly right. His mother, Lyra, worked maintenance on the inner rotation systems. It was quiet work when everything was running properly, which it usually was. She liked it that way. Problems were interesting, but routine meant people slept safely. She measured her days not in hours, but in cycles, inspection, adjustment, verification. Things staying where they should be. Kale measured his days differently. He measured them in questions. Why did the station rotate at that speed? Why did stars look brighter from some windows and not others? Why did ships leave and not come back the same way? He asked these questions constantly, with the kind of persistence that made adults laugh the first few times and then answer more carefully after that. Because he listened. On Tuesdays he stayed late at the learning hall. Not because he had to. Because there was an older student named Trin who knew how to take things apart and put them back together again without breaking them. Trin had a patience that made other people slow down when they were around him. Kale liked that. On one of those Tuesdays, Trin showed him how to balance a power cell so it wouldn't overload. You don't force it, Trin said, adjusting the alignment with careful hands. You let it settle into the place it wants to be. Kale nodded like he understood. He didn't. Not yet. But he would remember the words anyway. In docking sector 3, Rollin wiped grease from his hands with a cloth that had stopped being clean years ago. A cargo hauler had come in running hot, its cooling systems misaligned just enough to be dangerous over a long haul. The captain had been impatient. They usually were. Can you fix it or not? The captain had asked. Rollin hadn't answered immediately. He never did. He had crouched by the engine housing, listening, not to the captain, but to the machine. Then he'd nodded once. Yeah, he said. Give me time. He always asked for time. Not because he needed more of it than others, but because he refused to rush something that mattered. The captain had left. They always did. Machines, Rollin believed, told you what was wrong if you paid attention. Most people just didn't listen long enough. Across the station, Alaya's kitchen was already busy before the first shift change. Steam curled into the air, carrying the smell of something warm and deliberate. Her workspace was small, but everything in it had a place. Efficiency, not elegance. She moved without wasted motion. A delivery runner waited at the counter, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. You're early, Alia said, not looking up. You're always ready, he replied. She allowed herself a small smile at that. Almost. She finished sealing the container, checked the label twice, then handed it over. Tell them to eat it while it's still hot, she said. They always say they will, the runner said. They never do, she replied. But she kept saying it anyway. In the communications control room, Ivo leaned back in his chair, staring at a waveform that had stabilized 5 minutes ago. The system didn't need him. It rarely did. So he stayed. He had long ago realized that his job wasn't just maintenance. It was attention. Being there when something subtle shifted, when a signal carried something it shouldn't, when silence meant more than noise. He picked up his cup of tea, took a sip and made a face. Cold again. He didn't fix it. He never did. There were routines layered on routines. People who passed each other at the same hour every day. Conversations that picked up where they had left off, sometimes hours later, sometimes weeks. A woman in Sector 5 who knitted thermal linings for station suits because the insulation never quite held at the edges. A medic who hadn't taken a full day off in 3 years because nothing critical never seemed like the right time to leave. A pair of siblings who raced each other along the observation corridor every evening, their footsteps echoing just enough to annoy everyone else and delight themselves. And through all of it, the station continued its slow rotation. Steady. Predictable. Unremarkable. That was the thing about Arindergate. Nothing about it demanded attention. Nothing about it warned you. Which is why, when something finally did change, no one recognized it for what it was. At 2:17 station time, Kale finally started his recording. He sat up straighter, held the small model ship carefully in both hands, and looked directly into the projection lens. Hi, he said, smiling a little too seriously. I made something for you. He adjusted his grip so the model was centered. It doesn't fly, he admitted, but I think it looks right. Behind him, the station hummed. Around him, 190,000 lives moved through their routines. Unaware. Unprepared. Still believing, in the quiet way people do, that tomorrow would look very much like today. It almost always had. Until it didn't. At first, it didn't feel like anything. That was the problem. In the communications control room, Evo noticed the delay before anyone else did. It was small. So small it barely registered as an error, just a fraction of a second between signal relay confirmations. The system compensated automatically, smoothing the gap, adjusting timing so nothing appeared out of place. Most operators wouldn't have seen it. Evo did. He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing at the display. The waveform looked stable. Too stable. He tapped the console, pulling up the raw feed before system correction. The delay was still there, repeating at regular intervals now, like something was interfering. Not blocking. Not jamming. Just touching the signal. Routing issue? He murmured to himself. He ran a diagnostic. The system responded immediately. All systems nominal. He didn't believe it. Across the station, nothing changed. Not yet. In docking sector 3, Rollin was halfway through sealing the cooling manifold on the cargo hauler when his tool paused mid-cycle. He frowned. The tool reset itself instantly, humming back to life as if nothing had happened. "Don't do that," he muttered, tapping it once before continuing. Machines didn't glitch without reason. Not his tools. In Sector 9, Kale was still recording. "And I used the blue connector for the back because it looked like an engine," he said, holding up the model ship. He turned it slightly, checking the angle. "See?" The projection flickered. Just for a moment. He blinked. "Mom?" he called. From the kitchen, Lyra glanced toward the room. "What is it?" It blinked. "Probably just a buffer lag," she said automatically. "Keep going." He hesitated, then nodded, turning back to the screen. In the learning hall, the overhead lights dimmed by less than a degree. No one noticed. Except the systems. At 2:19 station time, the first external sensor ping failed to return. The system flagged it. Low priority. Routine anomaly. Retry initiated. Evo watched the retry fail. Then fail again. His fingers hovered over the console. That wasn't right. External sensors didn't just stop. Not without debris, interference, or... He pulled up the outer array feed. For a moment, there was nothing. The display filled. 12 contacts. They hadn't approached. They hadn't crossed detection range. They were simply at the edge of the station's gravity field. Evo didn't move. Didn't breathe. The shapes were wrong. Even at this distance, the silhouettes didn't match any known registry pattern. Too wide at the rear. Structural symmetry that made no sense for civilian craft. Energy signatures that fluctuated in ways he had only ever seen in archived threat profiles. Profiles he had studied once. Years ago. Because it was required. Not because anyone thought he would ever see them. His hand moved. Slowly. Deliberately. He opened a wider scan. The system complied. The contacts sharpened. And the readings came in. Mass. Velocity. Configuration. Weapons. Evo felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear. Not yet. Recognition. "No," he said quietly. Because there was no reason for this. No conflict. No warning. No message. The station remained quiet. 190,000 people still inside their routines. Still believing in the stability they had built their lives around. Evo triggered the priority channel. His voice, when it came, was steady. Unidentified vessels detected at perimeter range. Configuration unknown. Requesting immediate verification. The system acknowledged. No response came back. He escalated. Multiple contacts. No registry. No transmission. Still nothing. The ships did not move. They held position. Silent. Watching. At 2:21 station time, Kale's recording stopped. Not gradually. Not with distortion. It simply cut. Mid-sentence. "And I think when I'm older I..." Silence. He stared at the blank screen. "Mom." This time, there was no automatic answer. In the control room, Evo's console lit up. Every channel. Every frequency. Every system requesting confirmation at once. The station, for the first time in 73 years, did not understand what it was seeing. And for 190,000 people who had never needed to think about danger, That was the moment it arrived. Not with a sound. Not with an explosion. But with 12 silent shapes in the dark. And no explanation. The ships waited. For exactly 8 minutes. No transmission. No warning. No demand. No attempt at contact of any kind. They did not identify themselves. They did not explain their presence. They did not ask for surrender. They simply held position above a station that had never needed to defend itself. At 2:29 station time, the alarm finally sounded. It was a system-wide broadcast, triggered automatically after repeated failed contact attempts. A sound no one had heard outside of annual safety drills. Urgent. Wrong. People stopped. Mid-conversation. Mid-thought. Then the second tone followed. And confusion turned into something else. In Sector 9, Kale covered his ears. "What is that?" he asked, voice small. Lyra was already moving. "Now," she said, grabbing his arm, pulling him toward the door. Her voice had changed. No hesitation. No reassurance. Just direction. In docking Sector 3, Roland froze for half a second. Then he shut down the engine housing without finishing the seal. Didn't explain. Didn't look back. He knew that alarm. Everyone did. They just never thought they would hear it for real. In the learning hall, teachers moved faster than the children understood. Line up. Stay together. No shouting. But no softness either. The older students didn't ask questions. They took the hands of the younger ones and moved. Because something in the air had shifted. And they could feel it. In the communications room, Evo was already broadcasting. Unidentified vessels in orbit. No response to contact attempts. All sectors initiate emergency shelter protocol immediately. His voice carried through every corridor, every room, every space where people lived their ordinary lives. The ships did not respond. At 2:31 station time, the first strike came. There was no flash, no warning light, no visible projectile. The outer ring of habitation sector 4 disappeared. Not exploded. Not burned. Gone. The station shook. A deep, violent tremor that rippled through its structure, throwing people off their feet, sending unsecured objects crashing into walls. Air screamed through ruptured sections. Emergency bulkheads slammed down in milliseconds. Too slow for some. In Sector 9, Kale hit the floor hard. Lyra pulled him up before he could cry out. "Move," she said. Her grip hurt. He didn't complain. Another impact. Closer this time. Docking Sector 3 vanished in a clean, impossible instant. Where Rollin had been standing less than a minute ago. There was nothing. No wreckage. No fire. Just absence. The station's systems tried to compensate. Routing power. Sealing breaches. Stabilizing rotation. It didn't matter. The ships above continued. Methodical. Precise. Unhurried. They were not attacking defenses. There were none. They were not targeting infrastructure for control. They were not issuing commands. They were removing the station. In the learning hall, the group of children reached the shelter corridor. The doors were closing. Too slowly. Always too slowly. A teacher turned back. Just once. Counting. Making sure. The third strike hit the central spine. The station lurched violently. Gravity faltered. For a fraction of a second, everything lifted. Then slammed back down. Lights flickered. Then steadied. Emergency systems holding. For now. In the communications room, Evo gripped the console as the displays flooded with failure reports. Sector losses. Pressure drops. System collapse warnings. He opened a broadcast channel. Wideband. Unrestricted. This is Arindergate. We are under attack. Unidentified vessels. No warning. Civilian station. We have no defenses. He swallowed once. Forced the next words out clearly. Requesting immediate assistance. Any station. Any vessel. Coordinates attached. He sent it. Fin. No reply came. Above the station, the 12 ships adjusted position slightly. As if correcting for drift. At 2:36 station time, the greenhouse sector was gone. At 2:38, the market corridor. At 2:40, the hospital ring. Places that had existed for decades, erased in seconds. Inside the shelter corridor, Kale pressed his face into his mother's side. He could feel her heart. Too fast. Are we going to be okay? He asked. Lyra didn't answer, because for the first time since she had come to Arindergate, she didn't know. The bombardment continued. Steady. Relentless. Without variation. Not rage. Not chaos. Precision. Above them, 12 ships carried out their work. Silent. Uninterrupted. And across the station, 190,000 lives that had been built slowly, carefully, over 73 years, were being reduced to nothing. Without explanation. Without negotiation. Without reason. As if they had never mattered at all. There is always a moment, in events like this, where everything that follows depends on one decision made under pressure. On Arindergate, that moment belonged to someone no one would have chosen. Docked at secondary port B was a cargo vessel named Last Light. It was not fast. It was not heavily shielded. It was not designed for evacuation, combat, or anything remotely heroic. It was designed to carry freight. Efficiently. Cheaply. Reliably. Its captain, Mara Venn, had owned it for 9 years. She trusted it the way you trust something that has never once failed you when it mattered. When the alarm sounded, she didn't ask questions. She ran. By the time the second impact hit, she was already on the bridge. Her crew of 7 followed seconds behind. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Mara was already calculating. Distance to exit vector. Time to intercept. Heat signatures from orbit. Weapons cycle patterns. She didn't know what the ships above were. But she understood what they were doing. And she understood one other thing. No one was coming. Status, she said. Dock clamps disengaged, but we're still connected to loading conduits, her engineer replied. Cut them. We'll lose. Cut them. The ship shuddered as connections tore free. Metal screamed. Warning lights flared. Power. Running hot. Life support stable, for now. Mara opened every channel. Every frequency. Every emergency band. This is Captain Mara Venn of the cargo vessel Last Light, docked at Arindergate Secondary Port B. Her voice was clear. Not loud. Not panicked. We are loading survivors. The pause. Not hesitation. Just breath. Anyone who can move, get to Secondary Port B, immediately. She switched channels. To any ship in range, this is a civilian station under active attack. No defenses. No warning given. If you can hear this, record everything. She cut the channel. Turned back to her crew. We have a window, she said. How long? Her first mate asked. Mara looked at the sensor feed. At the ships above. At the pattern of their strikes. Not long enough. The first survivors reached the ramp within 2 minutes. They came running. Some injured. Some carrying others. Some with nothing at all. Mara stood at the base of the ramp. Directing. Counting. Moving people faster than they thought they could move. Inside. Keep moving. Don't stop. Her crew adapted instantly. Cargo space cleared. Containers pushed aside. Anything not essential, abandoned. The ship was never meant to carry people. It carried them anyway. Children were lifted into maintenance corridors. Families packed into storage holds. Air became thin faster than the system liked. Mara didn't slow down. Every person through that ramp was a person not left behind. Her engineer, Dax, carried 2 children at once without being asked. Her first mate stayed at the ramp, refusing to step back until there was no one left in sight. Capacity, someone said. Exceeded, another answered. Mara didn't respond. Because capacity didn't matter anymore. At 2:42 station time, another impact hit the outer port structure. Closer. Too close. The ship rocked violently. We need to go, her first mate said. Mara looked past him. Down the corridor. Someone was still running. She waited. 3 seconds. Captain. The runner stumbled. Recovered. Reached the ramp. Mara nodded once. Close it. The hatch sealed. Lift us. The last light rose from the port just as the structure behind it disappeared. The ship cleared the station. Barely. And immediately, the 12 ships saw it. Of course they did. The last light was large, slow, radiating heat from every system pushed beyond design limits. It was the opposite of invisible. Mar didn't try to hide. She pointed the ship toward the nearest relay beacon and ran. Time to intercept? Her navigator asked. Mara checked the numbers. 17 minutes. Not enough. But enough for one thing. Open data link, she said. Her hands moved across the console. Precise. Sensor logs. Attack patterns. Ship configurations. Energy readings. Trajectory data. Everything. She packaged it. Compressed it. Verified it. No mistakes. No gaps. This matters, she said quietly. Not to her crew. To herself. Because she understood, perfectly, what this information meant. She opened a final channel. Attached her voice to the data. This is Captain Mara Venn of the cargo vessel Last Light. Her voice did not shake. Arindergate has been destroyed without warning by 12 unidentified warships. A breath. Steady. Civilian population. No defenses. No provocation. She transmitted coordinates. Time stamps. Verification codes. This data is accurate. Another breath. Please, don't let this be ignored. She sent it. The relay beacon received the packet, processed it, and transmitted it outward, into the network, beyond the system, toward human space. Mara watched the confirmation signal. Packet sent, her engineer said. She nodded once. Behind them, the intercept closed. 10 seconds, the navigator said. Mara didn't turn. She kept her eyes on the relay confirmation, because that was the part that mattered. The last light went dark. The relay beacon followed seconds later. But the data was already gone. And somewhere far beyond Arindergate, someone was about to receive it. The data reached human space in 11 minutes. It did not arrive with noise. It did not trigger alarms. It did not interrupt anything important. It appeared quietly in a monitoring queue. At first, it was just another flag transmission. Unusual. High priority. But not yet understood. The analyst who opened it was named Aaron Soul. He had been on shift for 6 hours. He was tired in the way that makes your mind slower, but your habits sharper. He opened the file. And stopped breathing. Not because of what he saw. Because of what he understood. Coordinates. Civilian registry. Population index. 190,000. He scrolled. No military signatures. No defense grid. No escalation markers. Impact data. Precise. Repeated. Systematic. He leaned back in his chair. Just slightly. Then he stood up. That was what people later remembered. Not what he said. Not what he did next. That he stood up. Because in his entire career, he had never needed to. He called his supervisor. She came in. Looked at the screen. Did not speak. Then she called someone else. And within minutes, the room filled. Not with panic. Not with noise. With stillness. Because everyone there understood the same thing at the same time. This was not an accident. This was not a misunderstanding. And this was not small. The Galactic Assembly convened 13 hours later. Representatives from 29 systems. Emergency session. Full attendance. The chamber was quiet. Not solemn. Not yet. Uncertain. The first speaker expressed concern. The second expressed sympathy. The third called for investigation. Words. Careful. Measured. The fourth suggested restraint. The fifth suggested verification. A committee was proposed. Then a subcommittee. Then a review body to determine whether a subcommittee was necessary. No one raised their voice. No one broke protocol. Because this was how things were done. At the far end of the chamber, the human delegation listened. Director Ellen Var stood with her hands folded behind her back. She had been in that chamber for 18 years. She had heard every variation of this conversation. Every version of delay dressed as procedure. Every attempt to turn action into discussion. She did not interrupt. She did not object. She did not speak at all. She listened. To the word investigation used as a substitute for response. To the word regret used as a substitute for consequence. To the quiet machinery of diplomacy, trying very hard to turn something irreversible into something manageable. The attackers sent a statement. It arrived during the session. Formal. Translated automatically. The removal of Arindergate was a discouragement action. The structure occupied a region of interest. No hostile intent was present. No declaration of conflict is recognized. The chamber absorbed that. Silently. A representative asked for clarification. Another suggested dialogue. The word misunderstanding appeared, then stayed. Alinvar watched all of it. She watched the words form. Watched the structure of delay assemble itself. Watched people choose, carefully, not to understand what they were looking at. She was not angry. She had already moved past that. What remained was something colder, something precise. When the session chair finally turned to her, she inclined her head slightly. The human delegation will respond, she said. Her voice was calm. Even. No further comment at this time. She closed her terminal, picked up a different device. Smaller. Encrypted. Not connected to any public system. And as the chamber resumed its discussion, as committees were proposed, as language was refined, she stepped out. The corridor outside was quiet. Her aide followed behind her, struggling to keep pace. Director, he said carefully, what are we? She raised a hand. Not to stop him. Just to delay him. The device in her hand connected. On the other end, a room full of people had already been waiting. They had received the data. They had read it. They had understood. They did not ask questions. They did not need to. Alinvar spoke. 4 words. The room on the other end. Back in the chamber. The discussion continued. Unchanged. And across human space. Something that had been still, for a very long time, began to move. The response came 9 days later. Not immediately. Not emotionally. Not publicly. 9 days of silence. Long enough for the assembly to settle. For discussions to slow. For the event to begin its transformation. From crisis into procedure. Then the message arrived. It was not broadcast. Not announced. Not delivered through official channels. It was sent directly. To the government responsible. To the assembly. To every major system with the capacity to understand what it meant. 2 pages. That was the first thing that stood out. Most diplomatic responses were long. Carefully worded. Layered with interpretation. This was not. 2 pages. Plain. Precise. The title was written in 3 languages. Standard diplomatic script. Common trade tongue. And the attacker's own ceremonial language. That last detail was not an accident. The title read, Notice of Account, Outstanding Balance. No mention of war. No mention of retaliation. No accusation. An account. The first paragraph described the event. A civilian station. 190,000 inhabitants. No military presence. No defensive capability. Destroyed without warning. For sentences. No adjectives. No emotional language. Just facts. The second paragraph named responsibility. Directly. Unambiguously. No room for interpretation. The third. A time frame. A period of 60 standard days is hereby granted for full withdrawal of all military and administrative presence from designated zones of interest. No explanation of the zones. No definition. Designation. The fourth paragraph was shorter. Failure to comply will result in resolution of account by alternate means. That was all. No threat. No elaboration. No attempt to justify what that meant. At the bottom of the document, beneath the signature, there was a final line. Not in formal language. Not translated. Plain. The clock is running. When the message was received, it was read once. Then again. Then forwarded. In the attacker's capital. The response took less than 6 hours. The document was reviewed, analyzed, discussed, and dismissed. The conclusion was simple. Humanity had no recorded military capacity on this scale. No history of large-scale conflict. No indication of anything resembling a credible threat. The message was interpreted as political signaling, internal reassurance, a performance. The recommendation to withdraw was declined, formally, without urgency, because from their perspective, there was no reason to act. One official described the document as efficient. Another called it interesting. The third, privately, laughed at its length. 2 pages. But not everyone was comfortable. Ambassador Velan, who had spent decades studying other species, read the document 3 times. Not for what it said, but for what it didn't. He had learned over years of observation that the most dangerous signals were often the quietest. Not the ones that demanded attention. The ones that assumed it. He sent a private message to his family. Suggested they travel. Temporarily. To the outer systems. No urgency in his words. No explanation. A suggestion. Across the assembly, the message was archived, filed, discussed, then absorbed into process. Another item. Another situation. Another thing to be managed. And across human space. The commune continued. Not loudly. Not visibly. But with precision. Because the difference between a threat and a promise is whether it is carried out. Somewhere deep inside systems no one had thought to examine. Schedules were being adjusted. Routes recalculated. Systems brought online. Not quickly, but deliberately. As if this moment had been planned for a very long time. And with each passing day, the distance between warning and consequence became smaller. But to those who had received it, to those who had read 2 pages, and decided they understood, it still looked like nothing. Until it wasn't. From the outside, nothing changed. Ships moved. Cargo transferred. Trade routes operated on schedule. Human space looked exactly the way it always had. Busy. Orderly. Unremarkable. That was the first mistake. Because the most important movements were the ones that did not look like movement at all. On day 3 of the 60-day period, a logistics facility on a remote planetary surface updated its routing protocols. Nothing unusual. Facilities did that all the time. On day 5, 3 orbital depots adjusted fuel distribution schedules. Minor change. Within acceptable variance. On day 7, a cluster of storage platforms, positioned around an uninhabited moon, reported increased internal activity. Maintenance cycle. Routine. That was how it appeared. The first person to question it was not human. Her name was Talon Riss, an analyst assigned to cross-system monitoring. She was good at her job, not because she looked for anomalies, but because she noticed patterns. And something was forming. It started small. Energy usage. A slight increase. Spread across multiple locations. Individually insignificant. Together. She pulled the reports. Lined them up. Cross-referenced timelines. The pattern held. Facilities that had no reason to coordinate were shifting in the same direction. Not randomly. Deliberately. She flagged it. Her supervisor reviewed the data. Looked at the projections. Considered the scale. Then dismissed it. Routine variance, he said. Probably a reporting delay. Talon didn't argue. She archived the file. Then opened a new one. On day 12, a long-haul trade vessel reported something unusual. A formation. Ships traveling together. Not uncommon. Except for one detail. They weren't trading vessels. And they weren't broadcasting identification. The pilot logged the report. Forwarded it. It moved through channels. Delayed. Filtered. Scheduled for review. On day 16, a second report came in. Different system. Same pattern. Formation. Movement. No registry. Talon found both reports. Put them side by side. The trajectories aligned. Not perfectly, but enough. She recalculated. And this time, she understood what she was looking at. Not random movement. Not traffic. Mobilization. She escalated the file. Marked it priority. Included projections. Estimated scale. Large. Too large. Her supervisor read it. Slower this time. Then passed it upward. The response came back hours later. Continue observation. No alert. No escalation. Because what she was suggesting did not fit. On day 23, monitoring satellites began reporting synchronized energy spikes. Different locations. Same pattern. Activation. On day 28, a transport captain sent a message that bypassed normal routing. He had seen something. A column of ships. He stopped counting after 1,000. Because the number stopped making sense. That message reached the assembly. It was reviewed. Discussed briefly. Then assigned for further analysis. Later, Talon did not wait. She built a model. Fed every report into it. Every energy spike. Every trajectory. Every unexplained movement. The system processed. Calculated. Projected. Then returned a number. She stared at it. Then ran it again. The number did not change. She did not send the report immediately. Because she understood something very clearly. Once she did, nothing would be the same. She sent it anyway. On day 41, the assembly received a classified briefing. 62 pages. Too precise. Impossible to ignore. The conclusion was simple. Human space was not preparing. It had already prepared. For years. Quietly. Systematically. Without announcement. Without display. The infrastructure had always been there. The depots. The routes. The storage facilities. All labeled. All documented. All misunderstood. Because no one had asked what they were for. On day 50, a probe was sent. A manned, passive scan. It entered a region of space that had no official designation. Found everything. The contact counter began to climb. Hundreds. Thousands. Tens of thousands. The probe flagged an error. Ran diagnostics. Systems nominal. The number kept rising. When the data returned, the analyst reviewing it stood up. Just like Aaron's soul had. Because some numbers are not meant to be seen all at once. The report was transmitted immediately. No delay. No filtering. No committee. One line. Confirmed. Total active vessels, 900,000. Not cargo ships. Not retrofitted transports. Warships. Standardized. Organized. Maintained. Waiting. The countdown had not triggered preparation. It had triggered release. And across human space, what had been still was now in motion. But for those who had received the warning, for those who had read 2 pages, and chosen not to act, there was still time. Just not much. And not enough. The first fleet arrived without announcement. No warning signal. No pre-engagement transmission. No declaration of intent. One moment. Empty space. The next. They were there. 19,000 ships. They did not emerge in chaos. They did not scatter. They did not hesitate. They appeared. In formation. Perfect. The patrol commander of the outer defense line, General Threx Val, saw them first. His sensors populated faster than his mind could process. Contacts. Dozens. Hundreds. Thousands. He ran a diagnostic. The system confirmed. Working. Accurate. 19,000 warships. He had commanded fleets for 32 years. He had seen large formations. Mass deployments. Strategic concentrations. He had never seen this. Confirm identification, he said. Silence. Because there was nothing to confirm. These were not ships he recognized. Not individually, but collectively. He understood exactly what they were. Behind them, more followed. Not visible all at once, but present. Layered. Transmit warning, he ordered. The channel opened. This is Varkesh Border Command. You are entering restricted territory. Identify your intent immediately. The message carried. Formal. The fleet did not respond. They did not slow. They did not adjust course. They continued forward, as if the message had never been sent. Ready weapons, Threx said. His voice remained steady, because training holds longer than fear. The first shots were fired by his fleet. Disciplined, coordinated, energy beams crossed the distance, striking the front line. 3 human ships went dark. Immediate. Threx felt something settle. They could be destroyed. That mattered. Continue engagement, he said. And for a moment, it felt like a battle. Then the numbers began to matter. For every 1 enemy ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. Not rushed. Not chaotic. Replaced. The formation did not break. It adapted. Shifted. Corrected. Like a single structure. Adjusting to pressure. Behind Threx, his fleet held 6,000 ships. Experienced. Well-armed. They fought. And they fought well. Their formations held under pressure. Their weapons found targets. Their crews followed orders. They were not weak. They were umesh. The human fleet did not surge. It advanced. Steadily. Methodically. Each movement, calculated. Each loss, accounted for. On the command deck of the lead human vessel, Admiral Sarah Kane watched the engagement unfold. 3 screens in front of her. Loss projections. Formation integrity. Replacement cycles. She did not raise her voice. She did not rush commands. She observed. Adjusted. Continued. Exchange rate, she asked. 3-1, her tactical officer replied. The pause. Acceptable, Kane said. Not because the loss was small. Because the scale made it survivable. The battle lasted 9 hours. And in those 9 hours, the Varkesh border fleet was erased. Not instantly. Not easily. But completely. And that was only one front. Because while 19,000 ships engaged the border, the rest of the fleet, 46 additional battle groups, arrived simultaneously across every major system. Shipyards, fuel depots, weapons platforms, command nodes. Each one met with overwhelming force. No delays. No staggered strikes. Everything at once. The defenders could not regroup. Because there was nowhere not already under attack. The Central Command attempted to respond. They split their forces. Reinforced critical locations. The correct decision. The only decision. And exactly the one the humans had planned for. Because when the defenses shifted, the second wave arrived. Larger. Faster. Already positioned. Filling the gaps. Before they could be closed. From orbit. From deep space. From corridors no one had thought to monitor. The fleet expanded. Not appearing. Revealing. Across Varkesh territory. The sky changed. Not with fire. With presence. Ships. Endless. Layered into formations that stretched beyond visual range. Organized with a precision that made them feel less like vessels, more like a single system. Observers across the assembly watched the feeds. Silently. Because there are moments when reaction fails. When scale becomes something else. The number had been read. 900,000. But numbers are abstract. Was not. Was visible. And for the first time, every species in the assembly understood the same thing. The warning had not been a threat. It had been an offer. And it had been refused. But there was only consequence. The war did not end with a final battle. It ended with a message. On the 14th day of the campaign, a transmission was sent, direct, unencrypted, from Admiral Sarah Kane to the Varkesh High Command. It was not long. Your military infrastructure has been neutralized. Further resistance will result in continued loss. We are prepared to discuss terms. No triumph. No threat. The response came 6 hours later. Formal. Precise. Request for cessation. Admiral Kane read it once. Then set it aside. Not because it didn't matter. But because she already knew what it would say. She stood. Walked to the command deck. The room was quiet. Not tense. Not relieved. Focused. Because the fleet was still moving. Still calculating. Still ready. Open channel, she said. The connection formed. The Varkesh commander appeared. Tired. Composed. Understanding. I have received your request, Kane said. Her voice was the same as it had been on day one. Steady. Measured. We are prepared to discuss terms. The pause. Before we begin. She nodded once. A signal. And across the entire fleet. Through every command channel. Through every active line. A recording began to play. A child's voice. So uncertain. Hi. I made something for you. The command deck did not move. No one looked away. Because they understood. But the voice continued. It doesn't fly, but I think it looks right. On the other end of the channel, the Varkesh commander listened. Because there was nothing else left to do. The recording ended. Silence followed. Long enough to matter. Then Kane spoke. We are not here to destroy your civilization. The pause. We are here to ensure that you understand. Her eyes did not leave the screen. What you chose. The terms were sent. 4 pages. Not conquest. Not occupation. Every military installation. Dismantled. Every weapon system. Removed. Under supervision. Civilian infrastructure. Untouched. Uninterrupted. Was allowed to continue. And one more requirement. A memorial. At the coordinates of Arindergate. Built from the remains. The Varkesh commander read the terms. Twice. Then signed. Because she understood what refusal would mean. The fleet did not celebrate. It did not broadcast victory. It did not change formation. It held position. Until the dismantling began. Until the systems were shut down. Until the threat was no longer possible. So it returned. Not dispersed. Not decommissioned. Waiting. The memorial took 2 years to complete. It did not stand on a surface. Because there was no surface left. It floated. In the exact place. Where Arindergate had once been. Dark stone. Fragments recovered. Piece by piece. From the debris. Names carved into its surface. 190,000 of them. Grouped as they had lived. Sector by sector. Family by family. In one section. A smaller engraving. A ship. Uneven. Slightly crooked. But unmistakably. Made by hand. On a quiet morning. Years later. A woman sat at a small table. In an apartment far from where the station had once been. She was older now. Her hands moved more slowly. But carefully. A message notification appeared. Archive recovery. She opened it. The screen flickered. A boy appeared. Holding something. Hi, he said. I made something for you. Her breath caught. Her hand rose. Without thinking. To her mouth. I know it doesn't fly, he continued. But I think it looks right. The recording ended. As it always had. Mid-thought. She sat still. For a long time. Then she saved it. Copied it. Stored it. Everywhere she could. Because some things. You do not risk losing twice. She printed the image. A small ship. Crooked. Perfect. And placed it. On the wall. Where she would see it. Every day. So, the world moved. People walked. Ships passed. Life continued. As it always does. But somewhere. In the space between stars. A memorial remained. Carrying 190,000 names. And a single message. Written not in stone. But in memory. That quiet. Does not mean harmless. That patience. Is not weakness. And that some choices. Are answered. Completely.